My name is Greg Mielek. I'm here with the OASIS Working Group, which is a subdivision of the OASIS Helpers Group. The reason I'm here is I have some expertise of about a decade's in length in foreign exchange trading. I have some very good friends who became involved in OASIS and got entangled in this thing. And I took an interest after reading the first complaint. I was confused and disturbed by the lack of evidence that initiated all of this. And then I became more and more concerned as I got more and more familiar with it. So I called in a good friend of mine who I'd worked with for several years, who was an internationally recognized foreign exchange trader, teacher. We had worked together for several years. I had trained in Forex trading, amateur traders for several years with him. And I wanted his independent opinion about what he felt. His name is Abe Kaufness, and he eventually became the expert, was intended to be the expert witness for Mike DaCorta in his criminal trial, but was not called ultimately as a witness. And he concurred with me, and we were off to the races. So, Joe?
I'm Joe Paniagua here. I started working for Oasis in 2016, March, right after Frank Anili had passed away, the brother of Joe Anili. Got to know Mike very, very well, and Joe I knew from youth sports. When everything seemed to be all kosher until the government came in, and I was a witness for both the prosecution and for the defense, explaining what the back office operation was. And didn't include the checkbook, so it had nothing to do with the checkbook. And then it wasn't until after the trial was over that I started looking at the evidence, and my God, I'm here because Michael DaCorta was railroaded, and I'm here and it's my duty and obligation to help Mike because he's an innocent man doing time when he shouldn't be. And we'll go through the rest of the webinars going over that.
Jason?
Yeah, I'm Jason McKee. I was an investor with Oasis. I had put an entire 23 years of working as a union electrician. I pulled my money out of a pension fund and swung it over to Oasis. It was everything that I had as far as a pension goes. I helped talk to many of my family, my friends who also put their money over into Oasis. And I got involved in this helper group because not only did I lose everything that I had, that I had people that I loved dearly more than anything in this world who would also listen to me and put their money into it because of me. And so I'm one of those guys that takes action whenever you see injustice going on. And as I discussed this over many days with many people, a lot of things just didn't add up, and it made us start digging our heels in. And so that's how I became involved in this.
John?
I'm John Paniagua. I'm brother of Joe Paniagua. And I became first involved with Oasis back in 2014. I actually invested $100,000 then. I was an investor, not a lender, in that program. And in 2017, 2018, when they switched over to the new program, I became a lender and I put more money into Oasis. I was also responsible for building the reporting application on the back end. So I was very intimate with a lot of the background processing that was going on in terms of capturing the spreads from the trading system that they have, the ETC SpotX. I built a system in the back, and then after the government stepped in and shut down, it just didn't add up. And looking at the original complaint, there was definitely inconsistencies, tremendous inconsistencies. And then I met Greg through, it was through, what was the name? It was Debbie, right? Deb Cheslow. And then after I met Greg and Abe, I began doing more digging into, especially when I started looking at the reports from the receiver and also evidence that was provided to me by Mike's attorney, Adam. And it is there looking at the evidence and looking at all the bank statements and the money flows, where everything we put together began to definitely crystallize that this was not a Ponzi scheme operation as claimed by the feds, the authorities, and the receiver. And that's why I definitely joined this group to definitely shed a light on all this evidence that we've seen that was not introduced into Mike's trial, unfortunately. That would have helped out. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
So the Oasis Helpers Group that we've all four referred to came into existence back in June of 2020, actually in May of 2020, when the receiver put a call out for everyone to file their claims. This went out to all of the Oasis investors, lenders. And Jason and I particularly became involved in helping attorney Brent Allen Winters process those claims on behalf of everybody who signed up under power of attorney with him, so it could be facilitated, that process could be facilitated most expeditiously and with the least amount of cost to anybody, and we hoped it would save a great deal of time. We made every effort, Abe and I did, from approximately June of 2019, shortly after the case had been initiated a couple of months later, all the way through until the end of that year, to help the receiver. We weren't sure when we began this whether the CFTC, the Commodity Future Trading Commission, had filed a legitimate complaint against the company. We weren't at all certain that, in fact, something illegal had not taken place. I, by the way, am not an investor or a lender, but I have many very, very dear friends who are. So the Oasis Helper Group came into existence for that reason. We were deeply engaged in the process of helping Brent put together all the necessary information for people to file their legitimate claims and get those into the receiver so that he could process them for funds as they were recovered. I since have been taken on as paralegal for attorney Winters and worked very closely with him, so I've been made conversant with the court filings and am up to speed with all of that. All four of us were present in Tampa back last April when Mike DaCorta was taken into his criminal trial. And all of us have reached the conclusion, both independently and through shared opinion, as you've heard, that we don't believe he received a fair trial, probably because not sufficient evidence was shown to the jury, or it wasn't shown in a way that was made clear to the jury what was going on. And to give some degree of allowance where it's due, it is a complicated case because Forex trading itself is somewhat complicated, very, very difficult to wrap one's head around and to simplify. But we're going to make every effort, given our expertise, to do that for you. Our purpose in doing these webinars, and there will be a series of them, is fourfold. First, to allow all the lenders who are involved with the Oasis International Group to more deeply and perfectly understand what has happened and why it happened, and possibly what can be done about it. We will raise some questions as to why things that we feel should have been done haven't been done, and make some suggestions as to what might be done. Secondly, we're hoping to help inform our own attorneys, those that are working on the case, at a level of depth and understanding about the complexities of the case, and simplify them, as we're doing for our lenders, so that they can better get a grasp on this going forward, particularly with respect to the upcoming civil case, which will go to trial in starting December 4th of this year. We're recording this on the evening of January 10th in 2023, the first of several webinar recordings that we'll do. Third reason is to help Mike's defense attorneys also come to a deeper grasp and understanding of what they might be able to use in the way of tools to assist them in their process of appealing his convictions. And fourthly, we're inviting, through these webinars, the media to join us and understand this case, which has been I think, intentionally overcomplicated. It's not as complicated as it actually seems. But if you leave out certain points of evidence, which both John and Joe alluded to, it can seem very complicated. It's kind of looking at a series of contrails and not having any idea what caused them if you've never seen the plane. It's something along those lines. It just becomes very complex and confusing as to what's going on in the sky when you don't know the cause of any of it. So we will endeavor to cover that. We're going to go through the transcripts of Mike's trial day by day and witness by witness, and do our best to explain and then possibly discuss certain points in that. So to begin that process, we're going to switch screens here. We're going to begin on the very first day, day one, which was April 18th in 2022. Court opened at 9:10 in the morning. Voir dire is another name for jury selection. It's the process that opens up the proceedings in a trial. They've got to select a jury. Mike had the option of choosing a bench trial in which he would have a judge adjudicating whether or not he was guilty, or a jury trial. He chose a jury trial. It's an old French term. There's a lot in American and English law that's French because the French invaded and took over England in the year 1066, called the Norman Invasion. And they held sway, particularly in the courts throughout the country, for many, many centuries. And so a lot of French terms come in. It means to speak the truth. So they're looking for jurors who will speak the truth. It's really the preliminary examination of prospective jurors to determine their qualifications and suitability to serve on a jury in order to ensure that the selection of a fair and impartial jury is impaneled. So our court started off with a group of 61 people from which to choose a jury of 12. Now, traditionally, going back even before the onset establishment of the English common law tradition, the English had established the concept of having a jury of one's peers, which is the notion that you're going to be tried by somebody who walks in your shoes, someone who the defendant is familiar with. In the old days, a free man, as opposed to somebody who was a subject or a slave, was to be juried by another freeman. A peer of the realm, in other words, a nobleman in England, would be tried by peers, his peers, and a landowner, a landsman by the landholders, and a marine by the sailors, and so forth. That was the original idea. It was meant to sort of cut back on complaints about the fairness of a judgment, because the defendant, in effect, was known by and knew the jury panel, so you could hardly complain that he was being unfairly treated. This entered into this concept of jury of our peers, although it's not found specifically in our Constitution. It was debated in the debates of the several states' conventions during the process of adopting our Constitution. This quote by the famous Patrick Henry, "Give me liberty or give me death, fellow." Mm-hmm. He said, by the Bill of Rights of England, which is one of the cornerstones of English law, a subject of the crown, in other words, has a right to trial by his peers. What is meant by peers? Those who reside near him, his neighbors, and who are well acquainted with his character and situation in life. So this is a fundamental concept, that this person who's being tried is being tried by someone who is familiar with his station, familiar with his character, his integrity, his work, his motivations, and his incentive. That's even today, although we've generalized it quite a bit, the idea is to get a jury of that nature. James Wilson, who signed the Declaration of Independence and was a Supreme Court justice until his death in 1798, said, "Where jurors can be acquainted," in other words, familiarized with the characters of the parties and the witnesses, where the whole cause can be brought within their knowledge, the knowledge of the jurors, and in their view, I know no mode of investigation equal to that by a trial by jury. Great confidence in a jury. A juror, member of the jury, has no responsibility to the prosecution, to the defense, or even to the judge. They are being tried by the convictions of their conscience and their relationship with their creator. And that's who they are responsible to.
What do you say we start from here?
We begin day one by introducing the opening performers, beginning with the Honorable Judge William Jung, who will preside throughout the trial. U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Florida. Judge William F. Young was first nominated by President Obama in 2016, but the Senate Judiciary CMTE did not vote on his nomination. He was renominated in 2017 by President Trump, with support from Senators Bill Nelson and Marco Rubio. He was confirmed on September 7, 2018. Judge Young earned a bachelor's degree from Vanderbilt University and a law degree from the University of Illinois College of Law, where he was class valedictorian and served as editor-in-chief of the Illinois Law Review. Defense attorney Adam B. Allen received his undergraduate degree cum laude from Tulane University in 1990, and his Juris Doctorate degree with honors from the University of Florida College of Law in 1993. He has practiced criminal defense since 1994 and served as an assistant federal defender, a supervising assistant federal defender, a branch chief, and trial attorney supervisor for the Middle District of Florida since April 2000. He currently serves as a senior trial attorney in the Tampa division. Defense attorney Sylvia Irvin received her BA from Whittier College and a JD from Howard University of Law. She was the La Alianza Latino Law Students Association president and the articles editor for the Howard Law Journal while attending Howard. Assistant U.S. Attorney Rochelle Desvaux-Bedke received a BA from Loyola University in 1986 and a JD from the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law, Arizona State University in 1991. In June of 2015, she was presented with the Top Prosecutor Award by the Women in Federal Law Enforcement Foundation. At the time, she was chief of the Criminal Division of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Florida, where she has been an assistant United States attorney since February 1997.
The jury selection process began with 61 prospective jurors, and each was randomly assigned a number from 1 to 61. Each in turn identified themselves to the court. 24 of them claimed that personal hardships prevented them from serving. 18 of those, being 9 selected by the prosecution and 9 by the defense, were dismissed for cause on the basis of their claimed hardship. That left 43 in the pool. Each of these were optionally examined by attorneys for each side, starting with the lowest remaining number, juror number 2, and proceeding chronologically through them until the prosecution had used up its allocation of 7 peremptory strikes and the defense had used its 10. 26 prospects were then left in the pool. The court struck one prospective juror for a clear conflict with the agreement of both parties. Finally, without further objection, starting with the lowest numbered juror and counting up until 12 jurors were called, and 3 more alternates added, the court affirmed that the jury had been selected. The 10 that remained unselected were then dismissed by the court, and trial was ready to begin. Of the remaining 26 left after others had been dismissed for cause or by peremptory challenge, the 12 chosen to serve on the jury or as alternates are numerically shown here in the chronological order in which they were selected. As you can see, the process ended when they got to number 40 and the final jury pool held 15 people. The rest were dismissed.
Trials are too important to be left up to juries.
So we're going to go through the 12 folks who were selected onto the jury, and you'll see that we've highlighted here certain items in red. Those things we feel were effective sort of strikes against that individual because they did not comport to a familiarity or a peerage, if you will, with Mike DaCorta. Mike is a father of 3 and a devoted husband of some 35 years now, I believe. Obviously, he has very, very strong motivations and incentives with regard to the protection and security of his family. And a person who is not married or has no children would not quite understand those motivations or incentives and couldn't weigh them in his consideration as he was going through this. Later on, you'll see some that are in yellow, yellow highlight when they come up. Those are highlights that we feel were very beneficial and favorable to Mike. If they're red, they were probably unfavorable to him. If they were yellow, they were favorable. So this is the jury that attorney Adam Allen selected.
Juror number 2, Ryan Wilson. I live in Tampa, Florida. I have lived there for 20 years. My highest level of education is bachelor's degree. I'm a registered nurse. I'm single. I have no children, no previous military experience, no previous jury service.
Juror number 7, Jeff Hawkins. I live in Brandon, Florida. I've been living there for 3 years. I have been living in Florida for 26 years. 2 master's degrees. I have a master in business administration and a master in learning and technology. My occupation is I'm a senior quality assurance specialist, married. My wife is a regional business development manager. She is in business development, waste management. I have 1 child and 1 on the way. She is 1.5 years old. No military experience and no jury experience. Hardship claim. I have a wife that's advanced maternal age. I also have a 1.5-year-old at home, and she travels for work. Being here without my phone is kind of a difficult, potentially dangerous situation.
And yet he was kept on this jury. Would any of you fellows care to comment why his master's degree and his master's in business admin and learning technology were significantly related to Mike's experience in Oasis? No?
Yeah, I mean, a master's in business administration and a master's in technology, right? And understanding business processes, business flows, and then the master in technology, understanding systems, how they work, how data flows between systems. So this normally would have been a good choice, other than the issue there, the hardship claim that would definitely introduce bias, I believe, at least a bias to get out of there quickly.
Yeah,
That's true. He would have had other things on his mind, concerns in his minds, would have been in a hurry to escape as soon as possible, which is common to jurors, by the way. And indeed, his master's degree is specifically related to Mike's experience as a CEO, a business developer, someone who managed all these, and the technology aspects, which both Joe and John were intimately involved with. He would have had some degree of understanding about that.
Juror number 8, Dominic Maranzana. I've lived in Tampa since 1991, in Florida since 1988. I have my JD from Stetson University College of Law. I currently work in HR and legal compliance for a freight company. I am married. I have 2 children. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. I have no previous military service, and I have never served on a jury before.
So here you've got a lawyer who's assigned the fine points of law and can help the jury come to grips with those fine points as well.
Exactly. He's married and I have 2 children, so similar to Mike.
especially in the contract area.
Juror number 9, Shannon Amanda Murphy. I have lived in Tampa about 9 years now, Florida for 15. In 3 weeks, I'll have a master's degree, MBA specifically. I am a corporate recruiter for a cybersecurity company. Single, no children, no previous military experience, but family is, and no jury service.
The good thing is,
Master's of Business Administration.
yes,
That's
right.
about it.
right, MBA, but usually there's a core with it, like it's either in finance or in accounting or whatever.
Or marketing or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Juror number 13, Bruce Keller. I live in the city of Bradenton. I've owned a home there for 6 years. I've been in Florida for 15 years. I have 2 associate degrees in construction. I currently do maintenance. My wife passed away in 2019. I have no military service and no jury service.
No mention of children.
It should never have gotten picked.
His associate degrees in construction and in maintenance have no relation or bearing whatsoever on anything Mike was doing with Oasis at all, nor anything to do with Mike's past history for that matter.
Juror number 15, Keith Sedlowski. I've lived in Oldsmar, Florida for the past 21 years. I have my BMA. I'm a business banker. I'm married with 2 kids, 13 and 15. I have no military experience, and I have never served on a jury. I've been in banking for 15 years. I have been exposed to, I guess, both lines of business. The accounting side for my profession, currently we have to take a look at tax returns and help with the underwriting process, so on and so forth. As far as compliance or holding them to it, I do not have any knowledge of that. but 15 years in banking and then managing some of the Merrill Edge, Merrill Lynch associates as well.
The reason these are highlighted is that bankers are notoriously conservative. I was engaged to one for many, many years and familiar with bank presidents and so forth. As a consequence of that, they tend to be, to use the vernacular term, bean counters. They're rule followers. They follow the strictest line of authority that they can possibly find to adhere to. They are not entrepreneurs, which Mike definitely was. And 15 years in banking, dealing with Merrill Lynch. Merrill Lynch was one of the core banking firms that was the cause of the 2008 mortgage crisis debacle, in which Mike eventually got wrapped up, and it resulted in the destruction of his international currency trader company. So for me, this would have been a definite strike.
And then the accounting side, when he was looking at tax returns, and help with the underwriting process. Tax returns, I don't think that has anything, that to me looked like a strike against them.
Yeah, one of the counts against Mike was that
It was a tax, yeah.
Yeah, it was a inappropriate tax return.
Juror number 17, Karen LaValle Harrington. We bought our home here in 2012 and became residents in 2018. I have a high school plus some college education completed. I'm a retired homemaker. I'm married. My husband is retired from construction for 40 years. We have 3 children, 42, 40, and 35. The oldest works for a farm credit agency. The middle child works for a tech company in Bedford, Mass., and the youngest works for a drug treatment facility in Connecticut. I have no military service and have never served on a jury.
She's married and have kids. Helps Mike from that point, but from the other point, she doesn't have the education credential behind her to be kind of selected to help Mike in this endeavor in terms of understanding, how this whole system works.
She has no real business experience. She says she's a retired homemaker.
Homemaker, right.
Yeah, that's of its own, but of a very different kind, not entrepreneurial in the sense that Mike was engaged.
Nope.
Juror number 20, Toy Tammy Furman. I have lived in Plant City, Florida for 18 years, and I'm a 7th-generation Floridian. I have an associate's degree. I manage a medical clinic. I'm married. My husband is a union iron worker. I have 1 child. He's 21. He does landscaping. I also have guardianship of my 2 nephews. Their mother is in the Army. One is 8 and one is 11. I have no previous military service, but my husband was a Marine, and I did sit on a jury. It was criminal, and we did come to a verdict. Hardship claim. I do have 2 little ones at home, an 8 and 11-year-old. I have to leave my house at 6:30 to get here, and their school doesn't start until 7:45. And I had to have somebody drive an hour out to my house this morning to get them to school. My husband works union. He's out of town until the middle of June.
Yeah, again, here's someone who's going to, that was selected, right? Selected for the jury and rushing to get this done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got real considerable concerns that she's got to get back and take care of and transport children back and forth to school. Can't do it. Husband's not there. She's got an associate's degree. She's managed a clinic, but she's not an entrepreneur. She hasn't done a startup. Right. She hasn't done any things that Mike has done. So she's quite, again, a strike, actually.
Yep.
Juror number 22, Kevin Nolan. I'm a resident of Tampa, Florida. I have lived there since 2008, which is the same amount of time that I have lived in the state of Florida. I have an MBA. I am currently a partner with Guidehouse Consulting. I am married. My wife is a graphic artist. I have 2 stepchildren and one of my own, ages 20, 23, 33. My 20-year-old is a sophomore at USF and works part-time at restaurants. The 23-year-old works for a government contractor doing military intelligence. And the 33-year-old is a regional manager for a firm that provides the gift shops for all the national parks around the country. I have no previous military experience and I have not served on a jury before. I served as an expert witness in 2 FTC antitrust trials.
Mr. Nolan, what is the nature of the consulting at your firm?
Guidehouse Consulting.
What do they do?
We do management advisory services, outsourcing, and litigation support.
So he's got an MBA.
Yep.
All right.
And he does
He-
management services, outsourcing, consulting.
He's been an expert witness in federal court cases before, 2 of them, so he's familiar with the process.
Juror number 23, Simon Talmagde DeWitt. I've lived in Florida for 24 years. My highest level of education is a bachelor's degree. I'm a records analyst for the last 20 years. I'm married. My wife is a pharmacist. I have no children. I have not served in the military. I was on a jury prior, civil. And yes, there was a verdict.
Is it medical records? What do you analyze?
I work for a water utility.
Oof.
Yeah, so, but he's a records analyst, so he's got some degree of capacity to take a look at the complex things and analyze them, right?
Juror number 28, Kelly Ann Wilkes. I have lived in Lakeland, Florida for 33 years. I completed high school. I'm currently an administrative assistant. I am single. I have no children, no military service, and never served on a jury.
How was she even?
A lot of strikes there, huh?
Yeah, I mean, this was a no-brainer. Should never have been picked.
Juror number 29, Kenneth DeLallo. I live in Dunedin, Florida. I have lived there 9 years, Florida for 17. I have a bachelor's degree. I'm an executive director for Operation Recon. Divorced. I have no children. I was medically discharged from the Navy, and I have never been on a jury before. I have 3 primary missions at the moment. The first one is the aid in support of military veterans, first responders, and their families. The second mission that we're on right now is the repatriation of American allies during Afghanistan. And the third mission is the aid of Ukrainian citizens fleeing the Russian invasion.
This guy isn't even close to being a peer of Mike.
No, and I would say, given these responsibility and as an executive director for Operation Recon with 3 separate missions, all current, all active, all essential, why would they want to tie him up on a jury?
Exactly. Divorced and no children.
Now, that's the jury. By the way, the jury's nickname is the Gods of Guilt. This sort of a funny nickname that's occasionally used because they really do. They are they're going to determine guilt or innocence, so they are the Gods of Guilt. After those 12 were picked, going down through the list, we need 3 alternates.
Juror number 30, Jessica Nickel Norton. I currently live in Tampa, Florida. I have been here born and raised, so 30 years. Highest level of education, I just completed electrical school. I'm currently a multi-trades worker at the Hillsborough County Aviation Authority. Marital status is single, never been married. I do have a 4-year-old daughter. I was previously in the military, army, medically discharged, and I have not served on a jury.
When you get your cell phone and you have a new agreement, do you read it before you sign it?
So initially my cell phone plan is under my parents. But probably like the most recent and reoccurring agreement that I read is the updates for Apple. Just that way, I know what information is being used, what information is going to be secure, what are they updating, basically kind of just their terms of what they're doing with my personal information.
Why is that important to you in particular with the Apple updates?
Just privacy. I don't want my phone number or email or kind of like how Facebook does ads. I don't want that to get out, and then I just have random things coming my way.
So this lady has certification education, basically, to work where she does at the Hillsborough County Aviation Authority. I think the best thing that can be said for her, and I'm not positive of this, but I think she actually ended up serving on the jury. I think one jury member had to leave. We'll find about that later. Probably the best thing is that she does read contracts, which you will find some of the lender witnesses used by the prosecution didn't, and that became important.
Alternate, number 32, Jason Diaz. I have lived in Tampa, Florida for a year and a half. I have been in the state of Florida for 54 years. My highest level of education is high school and some college. I'm self-employed in agriculture wholesale. I'm married. My wife is a director of software. I have one child that's 30 years old. He is a production manager. I have no military service, nor have I served on a jury. Hardship claim, I'm self-employed. I oversee all operations of my business. I have 125 employees that I have to sign off on payroll, so it would make it very difficult to operate week to week.
Mr. Diaz, juror number 32. I believe you said that your wife is a software developer. Is that right?
She is the director, so she oversees just the software in her company, ARC, Airline Recording Industry.
In the airline industry?
She's in the airline industry, and she oversees the software development side.
And so this is software, I guess, related to booking flights and moving passengers, things like that?
Correct. Travel.
So Mr. Diaz is the second alternate. If it should go deep into the jury pool and they lose a second juror, he has to be through, the alternates have to be there through the entire course of the case. Of course, they attend. In case they have to step in and actually act as part of the jury pool and help make judgment on the case.
That way they'll know all the information that's been presented up to that point.
Correct. So he is self-employed. That's a good, and he also oversees 125 different employees responsible for those people. Does have a child, is married, and the sort of a positive thing that negates to some extent the fact that he's got high school and some college.
Juror number 40, Michelle Wangler. I have lived in St. Petersburg, Florida for 31 years. My highest level of education is high school and then a whole bunch of technical certifications. Let's see. My occupation is I'm a vendor business development rep too. I am married. My husband is a manager, nationwide manager for technicians that install medical panels. I have 2 children, 29 and 24. They both just had birthdays. One is in school. One is a sales parts manager for an automotive company. No previous military service, and I have never served on a jury.
I believe you told us that you have lots of tax certificates.
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit more about those? And can you hold the mic up?
Sure. I work at Tech Data Corporation, TD Synex now. I've worked in technical service for many, many years and got many technical certifications in order to support specific products, whether it be networking gear or software or hardware.
And how long have you worked for Tech Data?
26 years. I think it is important. So pretty much everything that they said, if there are specific things, make sure that there's nothing illegal for the state that you reside that. If there is a cancellation, you want to be able to make sure if there's any loopholes or no loopholes, you need to be aware of that. So I'm pretty diligent about that. Also, in the past position at work, I did contracts and signed contracts and prepared contracts for vendor relationships.
So what would have made this lady very good, and she was the third alternate, is her interest and awareness of the importance of contracts, which, as you'll see, comes up very, very important. Also, her background in technical development, software, technical services, and things like that, which would also have been very, very important. Now, I should say that of the 5 that we questioned 5 of the jury selections. 5 out of 12 is 42% of the jury. Had those 5 that we questioned not been chosen, any one or all of these alternates could have been. Now, these are questionable strikes. And again, as I'll remind you, we went down from number 1 through number 61 in the selection process. We got down just to number 10, and Janice Graham was struck.
Juror 10, Janice Graham. I live in Lutz, Florida. I have been there for 31 years. My highest level of education is a bachelor's degree. My occupation is application support system analyst. Marital status is married. My husband is a CPA. I have 2 children. One is 29 and the other 31. The 31-year-old is a stay-at-home mom, and the 29-year-old is a microbiologist. No military service, and I haven't served on a jury before. I work for J.P. Morgan Chase. I'm an IT system analyst. Okay. And could you elaborate just a little bit on the nature of the work that you do for J.P. Morgan Chase? Yes. I support the UAT testing group. And by that, I'm creating files for Stratus and doing general application support, making sure applications are up and running correctly, researching some business issues. The part of J.P. Morgan Chase I work for does credit card processing. I have been a tester for software development for most of my career. The last 15 years has been with J.P. Morgan Chase. We are looking at processing of credit card and debit card transactions and the software that supports that.
So what would have made this Janice Graham an excellent juror is that she works in application support and is an analyst. She is very familiar, obviously, with software development and testing. And as you'll see as we go through the case, the ability for the jury to understand the software that was used to track the trading activities became critically important, and it was severely confused in the process. There was no way, I think, that the jury could have understood any of this. But with someone like this on the jury, they would have had and a couple of other people we've talked about, they might have gotten a good hand up on an explanation as to the intricacies of software development, which John Paniagua was instrumental in here, and it came up repeatedly in the course of the case. Very important, and yet she was struck very early on.
And just as an add-on, just to clarify, the questionable strikes are strikes done by the defense attorneys.
All of the strikes, the questionable strikes here, were done by the defense attorney. They were removed from the jury as a peremptory strike. It's an optional by choice. They didn't have to strike this person, but they did.
Juror number 11, Wade Childress. I have lived in Odessa, Florida for 12 years now. I have lived in Florida for 56 years. I have an MBA master's degree. I am currently working in human resource. I'm married. My wife works for the state of Florida in Everglades restoration. I have 2 children. One is 20. He's a college student. And the other is 18. He's in high school. I have no previous military experience, but a lot of family in the military. I have no previous jury service. I had my house broken into twice when I was living in Hollywood, Florida, probably about 15-20 years ago.
Did law enforcement respond on either occasion?
Yeah. I mean, it was after the fact, of course, because I didn't discover it until I came home.
Was everything resolved to your satisfaction?
As much as it could be, yes.
And there is nothing about those incidents that would affect your ability to be fair and impartial in this case?
I don't believe so.
Has anyone on the panel been the subject of an IRS audit or other action?
It wasn't an audit. It was a clarification of some sort with the IRS. We had to submit some additional documents, and the matter was resolved.
And was it resolved to your satisfaction?
Yes.
Any hard feelings as far as you are concerned? I guess the IRS that would affect your ability to be fair and impartial here.
No. They are just really slow about things.
Does anyone have a different view about bankruptcy? They hear that someone files for bankruptcy, whether it's an individual or it's a company, and they think that this is not a good idea? Does anybody have a not-so-good view of filing for bankruptcy?
I think from my perspective, to me, it usually means that they haven't been able to keep up with the financial end of the business. So maybe missing details and things like that in bankruptcy gives them an out to start over.
Have you had a personal experience with a friend or family member or someone that you know that has filed for bankruptcy?
I do have one friend that filed for bankruptcy, yeah.
Did you have the same feeling that your friend had not taken care of their personal business, and that was the reason why he filed for bankruptcy?
Yeah, actually it was a she. And she is a quite capable CPA, but her husband got her in a really bad position, and so they had to file for bankruptcy. And basically, they were not able to do a lot of financial things for 7 years, and then she was able to start all over again. So for her, it was a good case, but her ex-husband put them in a really bad spot.
So it sounds like there's at least one example that you have where bankruptcy ended working out at least well after time for this friend of yours.
It did, yes.
Number 16, Elizabeth Cooney. I lived in Pinellas County, and I have lived there a total of 24 years. Same with Florida, 24 years. I have a JD from the University of Kentucky College of Law. I'm an assistant state attorney in Pasco County in the West Pasco Port Richey office. I'm single, and I don't have any kids. No prior military experience and never served on a jury.
Miss Cooney, are you a criminal prosecutor?
Yes, Your Honor.
In the new Port Richey courthouse?
Yes, Your Honor.
Some of your fellow prosecutors are here. If you conclude they haven't proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt, what's your verdict then?
Not guilty, Your Honor. It's my job to hold them responsible for the burden.
We will hold you to your oath.
Yes, Your Honor. So, I have my undergrad in accounting. I have a master's with a specialty in forensic accounting. I worked as an accountant before law school. I have not touched it since.
What kind of accounting did you do?
Well, my mom is a CPA. So I worked in her practice just preparing basically 1040 returns and stuff since I was a kid, and then mainly compilations. I worked for Concan and Miller. They did like McDonald's franchise accounting. So I did those for the last 2 years before I went to law school. Nothing with commodities or anything like that.
And no preparation of financial statements or things of that nature?
No, it was a compilation. So the monthly accounting, it was McDonald's.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's find 11 more jurors just like her.
So I think that this is number 16. She could easily have been chosen for the jury. She has a law degree. She has a bachelor's in accounting. She's got a master's in forensic accounting. She obviously knew what this case was about. She mentions that it had nothing to do with the commodities, and she wouldn't have known that if she had looked into what it was, because they didn't bring it up. Her mother was a CPA, so she was familiar with all this bookkeeping, bookwork, way back since the time she was a child. She probably, in my opinion, might have ended up as the jury foreperson and been very, very well equipped to help the jury sort through the complicated issues that arose during the course of the trial. But she was struck by the defense.
Especially whenever she said, putting out the point that it is the prosecution to present the burden of proof.
Yep, it's my job to hold them responsible with the burden.
Number 18, Christine Gray. I moved to Wesley Chapel, Florida 9 months ago, but I have lived in Florida for 29 years. I have a bachelor's degree. I'm a senior consultant, divorced. I have one child. She is 7. No previous military and no previous jury service. Prior to my role I just started this past December, I did years in investment services. So a little bit of commodities training and compliance review for that.
Was that with I don't know the right word, like a stock brokerage house?
So previously I worked with Fidelity, Morgan Stanley, and T. Rowe Price Investments.
How many years was that?
8 years total.
That's pretty good. That's a good background.
Why do you say that, John?
You got Fidelity, Morgan Stanley, T. Rowe Price Investments. Understanding the nature of, it looks like stock brokerage house. And then the commodity trading and compliance review.
Yep. Another strike at an early level, 18. They got all the way down to 41 in the process of choosing jurors and alternates.
Number 43, Joe Poole. I have lived in St. Petersburg for 24 years, been in Florida for 44. I have a master's degree. My occupation is electrical engineering. I am divorced. I have 4 children, 22, 20, 17, and 13. The 2 older ones are in college. I have no military experience. I served on a criminal jury that reached a verdict. Occupation is AV systems coordinator.
Comment. Files his own taxes because he doesn't have anything complicated.
So since one of the charges that Mike had against him was that he had filed an illegitimate tax return, that was his 3rd count. He had hired a CPA. This fellow would understand the complexities of tax filings, what to make a decision, why somebody would choose, as Mike did, to have a CPA do the work for him and rely upon that work.
Right.
Number 49, Jeremy Gross. I have lived in Tarpon Springs for the last 4 years, Pinellas County for the last 6, on and off for 38. My highest level of education is a master's degree. I am currently an accountant at a pharmaceutical startup, but before that I worked in a church for 15 years as a director or pastor. I'm married, I have 3 kids, my wife is a 3rd grade teacher, my kids are 13, 8, and 10. I did that out of order. No previous military experience, no previous jury service. I have a finance degree and I use tax software or file it myself.
Once again, reiterate, these were all struck by the defense attorneys.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And now these are passed over, right? The ones that said passed over, they didn't even look at these, right?
We didn't get
These or even come to the plate to bat.
Again, someone who understood when you do and when you don't need a CPA to file your tax returns. It would have been helpful.
Number 52, Ramakrishnan Ganesh. I live in Palm Harbor, Florida. I have lived here for 7 years. Prior to that, I lived in Florida for 28 years. My highest level of education is a master's. I'm employed. I'm an information technology consultant. I am married and my wife is self-employed. I have 2 children. The oldest one, 20, he's a student in college. The younger one, my daughter, is 17 and a student in high school. I have not served in the military before, and I have not served on a jury before as well. I'm an information technology consultant for our company makes banking software, so I have been involved pretty much on building software.
Building software for banks, financial institutions.
Yes.
Can you elaborate just a little bit on the nature?
Core banking software, online banking software, mobile banking software, etc.
Have you ever developed any software that's been used for, say, stock trading or commodities or futures trading? Anything of that nature?
Not in that area, but more on the banking side.
So that question she asked, software for stock trading or commodities or futures, that doesn't make any sense. That had nothing to do with, with the work that the back office that was done with Oasis.
Yeah, but you could be referring to Spotics.
Yeah, but that again,
ATC.
that's like, yeah, but I could also be referring to New York Stock Exchange. Why would I care about software for a matching engine? So I mean, this level just doesn't make sense.
So John, is his experience in banking software development, is that pertinent?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially on the reporting, because banking software is a lot about is generating reports. What are the accounts? What's the how much money you have? Withdrawals, deposits. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, his work was definitely very similar to the work I did. Definitely.
Let me ask you this, John. Whenever for banking software like that too, wouldn't it be similar to the communications between ATC and the banks, where the deposits were cleared every single night, where everything was cleared every single night?
That's stuff. Yeah, because that's you're moving data around, you're transferring data. Yes, that would be very similar. Again, it's reporting. The other commodities trading and all that's more of like a matching engine. Matching trades, executing trades, matching mids and asks. So
we found that the jury selection contained about 5 people in it that were not Mike's peers, to say the least.
Yep.
That there were also significantly better choices to be put on the jury. People who had software development experience, people who had accounting experience, people who had tax filing experience, all of which related to the elements of the case.
Yep.
So 42% of the jury was made up of people who could have had better selections in their position. You guys have any other comments? And we'll wrap this one up for the voir dire portion.
Yeah, how many in the jury had hardship? Hold on, let me look at that.
At least 2.
2 of them in the jury and 1 of them in the alternate. Yep.
And the 2 that are in jury, are they of the 5, or they're additional to the 5?
No, they were not. They were not in the 5.
That's 7.
Yeah, so now you're talking over 50%, 60%.
Just to hopefully make a little bit of something clear too, is what we're doing here, correct me if I'm wrong, is whenever we're presenting all this to you, the people who are out there that are either victimized or wanting to know what's went on with this case, that we're just merely stating facts. Some of it might be a little bland. Some of it might be really exciting, but we want to make sure that you understand that these jurors here were picked before lunch. They brought in the first witness right after lunch, the very first day. So we want to make sure that people understand that the whole process and not just the final verdict.
Yeah, I've never heard in a criminal trial with a good, solid defense attorney. I never heard picking jury in 2 hours. No way. I never heard of that.
Yeah, it was remarkably fast. True thing. Yep. It took about 2 hours and 40 minutes entirely from the very first presentation by a juror of where they lived and so forth, all the way through to the end. Quite perfunctory.
Yep.
Okay, gentlemen, if you have no more comments, we'll conclude it for this evening and re-adjourn for the testimony of the first witness called by the government, Mr. Stephen Holland.
Looking forward to that.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I apologize. Wrong. We have to do the opening statements from the prosecution and the opening statements from the defense attorneys. Critically important. The attorneys have basically 3 opportunities to directly address the jury during voir dire, which we just went through, during their opening statement, and then in their closing statements. Other than that, they're talking to witnesses or to the judge, and they don't address the jury directly. So their ability to make an impression on the jury as to who they are, whether they're likable, what they believe in, all that sort of thing, all that kind of body language sort of stuff, when you're directly facing somebody, is restricted to 3 different opportunities, one of which they've already been through. The next one we'll find was critically important. It's like laying the foundation of the house. And they're going to have to cover what the elements of the complaint are, of the charge of fraud. And the prosecution took about 8 minutes to do their opening statement, and the defense took about 49, which, as we will see, is quite problematic. All right. Thank you, fellas, for your time this evening, and we'll re-adjourn as prepared to do the next one.
Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
Good night,
Good night, everybody.
God bless each of you.
You too.
Our work group chose a very different jury from those selected by the defense. They would have dismissed jurors shown here in red, and included those in blue who were dismissed or passed over by defense counsel. Unlike Mike's attorneys, our group didn't have discovery tools with which to compare the backgrounds of government witnesses against those of prospective jurors. Had defense counsel done that, they might have dismissed Kenneth DeLallo, who, like the husband of prosecution witness Patty Catter, was medically discharged from military service and who, like Patty Catter herself, is a veterans advocate. Such shared experiences would potentially bias Mr. DeLallo toward hearing Mrs. Catter's testimony in a more favorable light, to the detriment of Mr. DaCorta's defense. Mr. DeLallo was replaced by alternate Jessica Norton before Mrs. Catter took the stand, but Miss Norton was deemed unacceptable by our panel. Our group believes that 5 of the 12 jurors were not the best defense choices. They constituted 42% of the jury selected to decide Mr. DaCorta's fate. The addition of Miss Norton, along with another juror whose hardship claim likely motivated him to hurry through as soon as possible, brings the total to 7. If Las Vegas was taking odds on acquittal by this jury, on day 1 they'd have had it at 7-5 against.
If you wanted to make a lawyer look incompetent, would this be a good way of going about it?